The president certainly doesn't want to shut down, and if one happens, I think you only have one place to look, and that's to the Democrats, who are holding our military and our national security hostage by trying to push through other policies that have nothing to do with the budget. That's a decision you're going to have to ask the Democrats what's more important, national security or political agendas.
Okay, so it's all about political agendas. Will the government shut down at midnight tomorrow night? Let's ask somebody who's been around Capitol Hill. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, joins us right now. So, Newt, what do you think? The Republicans reportedly are really close to having the votes they need in the House, but the Senate's a whole other deal. What's going to happen at midnight tomorrow?
Well, my guess is the government's going to stay open. Speaker Ryan has put together a very clever package, which includes extending the children's health program. It includes postponing 3 taxes for Obamacare that virtually everybody in both parties are opposed to. I think it's going to be very expensive for Democrats in the House to go home and explain why they voted against children's health, why they voted against postponing these taxes that are very unpopular. At the same time, when you get to the Senate, there are 10 senators up for re-election in the Democratic Party in states that President Trump carried. How do they go home and explain that they care so much for people who are here illegally that they're willing to shut down the American military? I think that's a very expensive vote, and I think in the end, people like Joe Manchin are going to find it very difficult to go home having voted to close down the American Defense Department. Right. So I suspect if they get it through the House, my guess is they'll get it through the Senate. And then, of course, she'll be back here in 2 or 3 weeks having another round of negotiations.
All right. So, Mr. Speaker, in layman's terms, for the folks at home that get confused about all of this, because it can be very confusing, if the Republicans want to kick the can down the road and use the continuing resolution so that they can work on this in a few weeks, in about 4 weeks in February, then it has to go through the House first. Is that right? Using Speaker Ryan's plan, and then it goes to the Senate?
Yeah, my understanding is it starts in the House, as all spending bills do, goes to the Senate, and frankly, it's to the Republican advantage because if they can get the right bill through the House, it actually increases the pressure on Democrats up for re-election to vote for the bill. And again, there's a huge mistake here that the Democrats have made. They ought to offer to fund the Defense Department for the whole year. Get it off the table. Because if they keep the Defense Department in this continuing resolution, every couple of weeks the question is going to be, with North Korea, with Iraq, with Syria, with everything going on, you're really going to cut off money to the Defense Department? It's a very weak position to negotiate from.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Well, at the very least, they need time to plan. They need time to budget. They can't keep going month to month. That's the problem. You know military as well as anyone. But last time there was any cooperation, and it wasn't easy, there was a lot of government shutdowns, it was you and Bill Clinton. What is the mindset of any type of bipartisan work, of compromise, that we might be able to get back to that is just non-existent right now? What advice do you have to anyone listening?
Well, I mean, I started with the most obvious. When we went through very tough negotiations, and people forget how tough they were, and we shut down the government for 35 days in 1995 as a deliberate strategy. But before we did that, we'd already passed all the appropriations bills for national security, for the FBI, for the border control. So we had taken off the table everything which is a vital every morning national interest. None of those were being affected. And people will let you fight over the Interior Department or Housing and Urban Development for a year. I mean, they're not going to get all excited. Whereas when you have the Defense Department and you have the FBI and you have the Border Patrol all wrapped up in this continuing resolution, it's very expensive to vote no. And I don't think the Democrats yet realize the kind of record they're compiling of having no regard. You just had a wonderful interview with people who risked their lives to help America back in 2001 and 2002. The Democrats are proving right now they have no regard for the risk they're putting young Americans in uniform at, and it is a totally destructive way to run the Pentagon, to have these every 2 or 3 week continuing resolutions. They should offer, I mean, Schumer ought to get up and offer, fund the Pentagon for a whole year. Get it off the table, because it ultimately is going to cripple his side.
Let's talk about the other side. On the other side, you've got the Republicans. Jeff Flake technically is one of the Republican senators from Arizona, although he did write the anti-Trump book, and he's not running for re-elections because his poll numbers have tanked. Yesterday, he had a speech on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Only a couple of Democrats were in attendance. But, Mr. Speaker, listen to this. Here he is where he compares the current President of the United States to Stalin.
It is a testament to the condition of our democracy that our own president uses words infamously spoken by Joseph Stalin to describe his enemies. When a figure in power reflexively calls any press that doesn't suit him fake news, it is that person who should be the figure of suspicion, not the press.
So there is Senator Flake sticking up for the press versus Donald Trump. Your opinion, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I have the great burden, as you do, of actually caring about history. And to suggest that Stalin is the second most dangerous person in the 20th century. He killed more people than anyone except Mao Zedong. To compare him to an American president is such an absurdity that Senator Flake probably could get a job at CNN or somewhere else as a reporter, because this whole Trump derangement syndrome, which we saw the other day with questions of the physician, questions that were literally crazy. That also affects some senators. It affects a lot of academics. And Trump just seems to have this effect on people. The fact is, nothing Trump has said is particularly stronger about the press than things that Lincoln would have said, things that FDR would have said, things that Ronald Reagan would have said. Strong presidents often get really angry when they have reporters who they think are being inaccurate or prejudiced or unfair.
All right. Newt Gingrich today joining us. Sir, thank you very much. Have a
Thank
wonderful Thursday.
Good to be with you.